My name is Liz Mackinlay and I'm a professor here in the Faculty of Education. I've recently arrived at Southern Cross University from the University of Queensland and have taken up the role as Director of HDR in the faculty. If I were to describe my research, I would consider myself a very eclectic scholar. I have an interdisciplinary background which draws together anthropology, ethnography, Indigenous studies, gender studies, arts education and primary and higher education. If there's a thread that braids all of that eclecticism together, it would absolutely be a feminist way of working. I'm an out and proud feminist and will say the F word, both of them, fairly frequently, and it absolutely centres who I am in the academy and why I do the work that I do. The reason for my feminism perhaps links to the two PhDs that I have. I have a PhD in music anthropology and a PhD in education, and both of them were in the context of Indigenous Australian studies. The reason for the feminist part is because I began my work up in the Northern Territory working with Aboriginal people, specifically Yanyuwa, Garamara and Gurindji communities, of whom I have two very lovely children who identify as Yanyuwa. But I saw that the way that we were doing our work as academics was very distant, non-relational, very colonial, and just simply wasn't telling a good enough story for the women in my family who I love. And so for me it became trying to find a way to speak in a different voice in the academy that would centre Indigenous ways of being, doing and knowing, and also pay respect to the relationships that I have with people, my family. So feminism for me became a pathway to open that doorway to telling a different kind of story. And in relation to education, a similar kind of story around the ethics of what we do in the academy, what we think we're doing in the classroom if we're all about social justice and trying to empower Indigenous peoples in classrooms. I became really concerned about my practice as a white settler colonial woman and what I thought I was doing in the business of representing Indigenous Australian knowledges in that context. And again, feminism as well as decolonial work provided a theoretical basis for me to tell a different story. Theory is only as good as the story it tells, and story is only as good as the theory it invokes. And for me, feminism was the pathway to do that. So I've talked a lot about feminism, and I think it is feminism that absolutely drives what I do. When I use a word like feminism, I guess I'm invoking specific types of feminism. I'm in love with people like Helene Sissou and Virginia Woolf and Sara Ahmed, and the ways that they think about the work that we do in the world that might move us to becoming wise, love, just and non-violent. And so for me, that's the platform that makes me think about how I do my work, whether that's setting up a research project, the project itself, what it's focused on, as well as then the way I represent the results of that research. So at the moment, the project that I'm working on is one that's very close to my heart. I'm working with residential colleges in southeast Queensland, in universities, to consider issues of gender violence and consent and how we might do our work as educators differently for students who are residents in colleges. We know that sexual assault, harassment, violence, gendered violence broadly is a problem in residential colleges, and we need to do some really urgent work around that to educate for a different kind of lived experience of residential colleges. In this project, we are grounding our work in feminist methodologies, which is all about collaboration and relationship. So we've got a partnership model with the residential colleges whereby we're meeting regularly to determine the questions that we ask through interviews, as well as the ways we are going to eventually talk to students about issues of gender violence and consent. So it's a relational way of working, which is very much grounded in feminist principles of collaboration. When I think about impact and how it relates to my research, I'm continually drawn to the word impact itself, and here I'm going to lay bare my love of words and my fascination with words and writing. If we go back to the etymological roots of the word impact, it doesn't actually mean to strike with force, which is our current day definition and usage. We see the word impact as responding, being struck with some kind of force. But the etymological roots of impact go to the very heart of what I think maybe the impact of my work is. In the 15th century, impact used to mean press close. And for me, the kind of work that I do in the world, I hope presses really close to some of the principles and values that I hold from my grounding in feminism. That is, to do our work in a way that is wise, loving, just and ethical. And an example of that potentially is the draw work that I do, which is departing radically in academic writing, which is trying to put forward a way of crafting our words as academics that does that kind of impactful work in the sense of pressing close to love, justice and ethics. And the draw community is growing. We have over 200 members now. We run monthly gatherings, we have daily writing sessions, a conference mid-year, an end-of-year summer school, and I do masterclasses around the country and internationally on how we might do work that presses close to writing life. It's always hard to think about the kind of advice that you might give. I've been an academic for over 25 years, and I wish someone had told me this right at the very beginning, and that was follow your heart, do the work that matters to you. And if you follow that and are confident, courageous, it's not always easy work. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So follow what matters to you most, and be confident that in doing that, your work will come to matter to a whole lot of other people. A fun fact about me, just as I'm obsessed with words, I'm actually obsessed with running. I run nearly every day. I run very long distances. And I came first in the 80-kilometre race on the Gold Coast about 5 years ago. It took me just under 10 hours to run 80 kilometres. So there's a fun fact. So running for me is meditation, it's well-being, and it's also the way I compete with myself and keep myself honest. It's an absolute privilege to be here at Southern Cross University, but particularly to be in the role of Director of HDRs. As hopefully you can tell from my own story, doctoral work, postgraduate work is very close to my heart, and I guess one of the things I'm hoping to be able to do and make possible is for all of the HDR students to have a successful journey, in the sense that not only producing a thesis that is examinable and passes and gets through completion, but it is something that you're really passionate about. It's a piece of work that you're really proud of. And when you hold that work in your hands and you stand up and speak about it, you can say hand to heart, heart to hand, this work really matters.